Love is kind. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 6. The Apostle Paul lists a lot of things in demonstrating the more excellent way. He demonstrates a number of things of what love is and is not. The first two things that he says that love is that it is patient. That's how it's translated in the NIV, and we saw that it means long-suffering. It's the Greek word makrothumia. The second word, love is kind, and at the risk of botching this, it's something to the effect of Chresteuomai. And what it means is, well, first of all, this definitely should arrest our attention. If someone is going to tell me, if you want to succeed, do this, that's got my attention, because now I've got the keys to how to succeed. Well, specifically, Paul says, I'm going to show you the more excellent way. Then the very first two things he does is, he says, love is long in suffering, and love is kind. Okay, well, if I want to be a loving person, then I need to learn how to be long in suffering, and I need to know how to be a person of kindness. Well, I think most of the time we generally get a sense of kindness, but I think there's a little bit of clarity that God can bring to us in this. This word, Chresteuomai, means it's an extending of yourself to others. In other words, it's get off yourself. It's not about you. It's not about me. When I walk in agape love, my concern is about the other person. It's always about putting the other person's needs first. Now, that's not saying that I'm not to take care of my own needs, because you certainly are. And there's times where you have to learn how to draw boundaries. But when I have the ability of helping another, my kindness, my Chresteuomai, allows me to reach out and to help. It's an alleviating of the distress of others. If there's someone who's hurting, and then kindness, that love which is motivating me, is manifested as kindness, and I alleviate the need and distress of others. It's acts of goodwill. You know, one word we used to use a lot was benevolence, goodwill, the helping of other people, without any sense of payback. I'm not doing it so that someone pays me back. I'm doing it because it's the kind thing, the Chresteuomai way of doing it, of reaching out and alleviating the pressure and burden of another person. It's comforting. It's promoting the happiness and welfare of others. It's demonstrated at times. It comes across as tenderness and gentleness. Now, if you think of this, a lot of times we confuse goodness and kindness. I think that kindness is always good, but good does not always feel as kind. Yeah, it might be a little confusing. But for instance, if I'm holding a child and I'm holding a baby who's crying, that's a kind thing to do, to nurture the child and to help this baby. Yet I may have another child who needs some discipline, and if I were to discipline that child, that would be the good thing to do, because it would be instructing them in the right way. But it doesn't really feel very kind to the child at that moment. Kindness is always good, but goodness is not always kind. And in this particular thing, love is always kind. Love is always seeking on how to alleviate the distress, the need, the hurt of another. Kindness is a readiness to relieve the burdens of other peoples. And think of this story in Luke. I believe I've got a note here. It says in Luke chapter 5, verse 12, where Jesus reached out and touched the leper. That was an amazing act of kindness. You know, one of the greatest needs that people have is the needing of connection, and touch is one of the best ways to feel that connection. And here Jesus reaches out. He heals the man, but he touches the leper, who was known as an unclean person in that society. And Jesus touched him. That's kindness. It was the relieving of the burden of that man. Remember in Luke chapter 10, the story of the Good Samaritan? You know, there was a man who was beaten up and thrown on the side of the road, and a number of people, the Pharisees, came and passed him by and looked at him and went to the other side of the road. And this Samaritan comes along and sees him, A Samaritan was a person from the area of Samaria. They were looked down upon by the Jews because they were considered, just not real true Jews, because they had been brought in and had populated this area by an invading army hundreds of years earlier. They weren't true Jews. Yet here's this Samaritan who's looked down upon, and he walks across and he takes this man and he houses him and he pays for his needs, his medic. He didn't feel like doing any of that. That's not, who really wants to take your money and your resources but it was the loving thing to do. It was agape. It's a manifestation of kindness. Chresteuomai is the relieving and the elevating of burdens of another. How many times do we, myself included as Christians, do we walk right past the needy people of this world, the people that are in distress? And what God is saying is, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus Christ, you're going to drive yourself, even when you don't feel like doing it, you're going to do the thing to help to relieve the distress and the needs of other people. There's times where the Lord may desire to wake you up in the middle of the night. If you're sensitive and attuned to His call, He may call you in the middle of the night and ask you to get on your knees and to pray for someone. Do you feel like doing it? Heck no. You feel like keeping your head on the pillow and going to sleep. I need to go to work tomorrow. But love, agape, will drive us to do the loving thing, which is to be in obedience to the call on our lives at that moment, to pray. And who knows but that what spiritual needs and what physical burdens you're lifting off another person because of your love. There's a story in the Old Testament of Ruth, and this story has kindness all over it. I encourage you to go read it. Ruth was a Moabitess who was the daughter-in-law of Naomi. Naomi had moved from Bethlehem. She moved to Moab because of famine. She loses her husband and 2 sons. The sons had married, and here this woman, Ruth, was her daughter-in-law. And when Naomi finds that it's okay to move back to Bethlehem because the famine was over, she releases Ruth and says, go back to your family and to your people of Moab. And Ruth, in kindness, does not do that because she loves Naomi so much. She is obedient to the call of agape, and she works to alleviate the burdens on Naomi's life. And then with Boaz, in the way in which he comes, and read this story. I really encourage you to read this. You will see the kindness. In fact, it mentions the kindness of Boaz because of the kindness of Ruth. It's alleviating the burdens of those that are in distress. Naomi was distressed, and Ruth was distressed, and Boaz alleviated that distress. That is walking in love. Romans chapter 2, verse 4 says, or do you show contempt for the riches of His kindness? See, God is kind. He alleviates the burdens of those that are in distress. Do you show contempt for tolerance and patience, not realizing that God's kindness leads men to repentance, leads you to repentance? It's God's kindness, God's lifting of our distress and burdens that leads men to repentance. Consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. There's the 2 sides of the same coin. On the one side is kindness, and the other can be sternness. And if you're going to be a person of love, if you're going to be a person of agape, you will be a person who's kind, alleviating the burdens of those around you.